Hello, welcome to Time to Say Goodbye. It is the 23rd of July. Today we have a update in our long-standing debate about who is the Joe House of this podcast. And today we have a strong candidate because our guest today is just one of my friends who I met in college, much like Bill met Joe House in college. His name is Patrick Hultgren, and he's going to talk to us today about a topic. I think, Tyler, we've talked about this quite a bit, and something I've actually texted a lot with Patrick about, which is the ICE fashion show. I think is the way that we're going to title this, right? Like, what is ICE wearing? From the masks, which have gotten a lot of attention, obviously, and even legislation trying to ban them from certain Democratic politicians, to some of the what seems like over the top military gear that they are wearing. And I thought that we would have Patrick on because if nothing else, he is an expert in military gear, having worn it while serving this country in the Green Beret. Patrick, I don't want to stolen value you here. So like, correct me if I'm wrong. He was in Special Forces Green Berets. The reason why I thought about this was for my bachelor party. I of course had invited Patrick because he's one of my best friends in the world. And I thought that he was deployed. Where were you deployed at the time?
I was in Halo school. I was in free fall school in Arizona. So I
Okay.
was. We were thinking I wasn't going to be able to make it.
Right. And then my bachelor party, as you might imagine, was Las Vegas. And then at some point, Patrick walks up. I think we were at a craps table, and he's carrying this giant bag of gear that he had to bring to Halo School. I guess it's called. Why is it called Halo School? It's like, is that
Well,
just jumping out of
Halo.
things?
No, Halo is the common vernacular. It's called military free fall, MFF. So, but it's Halo. It's parachute. Pull your own parachute, jump out of an airplane, and infill into an objective.
Okay. All right. Well, my point is
Sounds
that
relaxing.
this giant bag. If you get in trouble, we can delete this. But this giant bag had all this gear that he had for, like, I guess, special forces stuff, and we just got drunk during the bachelor party and tried on some of this stuff. It was pretty cool. But that's what I was thinking about when I saw ICE outfitted and all this stuff. I was like, I wonder if they have that cool helmet that you can whisper and has some
Yeah,
crazy
they all have the
microphone.
cool helmet. Let me tell you, they all have the cool helmet, or they have the plastic version of it. So I can't tell because you can make a plastic version that's a knockoff. And I actually had one of those too. You'd wear those in trucks. So you'd have two helmets. You'd have your actual helmet, which is called an Ops Corps helmet. That is like a ballistic helmet. They're like $2,000 each, and you get it all kitted up. But you can just have a plastic one that they sell on Amazon for $80, or I don't know if it's on Amazon, wherever. And then you could just use those in a truck so that
That's the
your real
stolen
helmet
valor
doesn't get screwed
version.
up. That's the stolen valor helmet.
Yeah,
The
they're using
So I
plastic
can't.
helmet.
Yeah,
Like,
Amazon
sir, I would
helmets.
like to weigh your
right.
helmet. What I remember about the helmet was that it's expensive. It was extremely heavy. I was like, you're walking across like Afghanistan or something with this thing on your head that just seems extremely heavy. But before
Well,
we start,
the biggest miracle in that story was that it fit your head. So
yeah,
that
that's
was an
true. That's
immediate
true.
concern for me. Where if I had my helmet, my tin pot could fit on your gargantuan head, I had to take a look in the mirror and say,
It'd be real
"Hey,
bad if that helmet got stuck on Jay's head. You had to tell your superiors that this you
Yeah,
got your helmet stuck on Jay.
exactly. You're like, Hulker, where's your helmet? Be like, listen, it's on the head of a giant-headed
it's in
Korean.
Vegas.
Yeah,
It's in
yeah,
Vegas. Did you leave it there? No, it's just on this dude's head."
Yeah, he's down about $12,000 at the craps table right now. So why don't we leave him alone?
Yeah.
That part was not. Well, I don't know. It's probably true. But before we get to that, one thing I wanted to bring up was Tyler. I hear that you're now going through your second bout of hand, foot, and mouth disease.
Dude, it might be, honestly, I think I am, not to do stolen valor PTSD, but I think I have like hand, foot, and mouth PTSD. So I can't remember it might be 3 now, actually. I think Annika pointed out it could be 3. It's at least 2. But yeah, I've like blacked it out how many we've
I really thought you could only get that once. I don't know. Patrick,
No,
you
apparently
have a little
you can
one
have.
too. Have you gotten it? Has Eugene gotten it more than once?
Yeah, so I have a 2-year-old daughter, and she's got it a couple of times, and it's always been very faint. But it's like as soon as I see it on the hands, I'm just like, God damn it, and then that means there's a case of it, which means they're going to shut the daycare down and all that
Yep.
stuff. So
No, it's
we had it a
brutal.
couple. It'll shut the whole place down. We had a couple weeks ago where I had an extra day with my daughter, just hanging out, because she
That's a
had a
very
couple
sweet
little
way to put
spots on
it.
her hands. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I actually got it the last time. I think I've told the story on the pod before, but I was coming back from, I think, LA, and Teddy had it, and I thought I was in the clear because this was like a week later, and I'm on the plane, and I see my seatmate, this lady, just staring at my hands. I was like, what does this woman want? She's just staring at my hands. And I look down, and they're just like erupting into boils. I must have looked like I was like,
gross.
I was like,
Put some gloves
that's
on,
what
man.
she's
Put some
staring.
gloves
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
Did
I
you
felt bad.
apologize? Were you like, I'm sorry?
I don't even know. I think I just like put a book over them. I don't even remember, honestly.
Like, don't look at my shame. Yeah, hand, foot, and mouth is no joke. We've lucked, and I'm not going to even say it because I don't want to jinx it, but we've dealt with it, and it was like 2 days of, but she didn't, Frankie, at least when she got it, didn't break out into anything. But she definitely had it because everyone else had it and she was sick. All right. So let's get to this ICE thing, right? And then we want to ask you some questions at the end about like just generally how veterans are, or veterans as yourself are thinking about some of the stuff that's been happening abroad, specifically in terms of Trump's foreign policy. But we right now the news is basically everyone knows that ICE got a huge bump in the big beautiful bill, and that $8 billion of the funding is to hire 10,000 more ICE agents, and they're having a little bit of trouble finding who these ICE agents would be. And right now they're offering $50,000 signing bonus to anyone who wants to come back who used to work at ICE. I guess some people had left, and that they're going to need about 500,000 applicants to fulfill this 10,000 new immigration officers count, which is according to the LA Times. Border Patrol is also trying to hire new people, 5,000 new agents, and they think that to hire 5,000 qualified agents, that they're going to need 750,000 applicants. First of all, Tyler, like, do any of these numbers kind of surprise you? It's like, I didn't realize that it was like getting into Harvard or something like that to become an ICE agent or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't believe it, I guess is my conclusion.
You think they're cooking the numbers, dude?
Yeah, I think it's like they've gone UCLA and they're just like proud of their admissions stats. Patrick, what do you think? Like, I mean, you have some knowledge of this world. Do you think that do you think it's this hard to get a Border Patrol or ICE job? Like, well, why? And if so, then why? Like, why is it so stringent here?
Well, there's a couple of things. It is hard to get people into the federal government. Like, that's hard. It's annoying. It takes a long time. I suspect that your routine or your regular entry level GS guy for ICE is, probably getting a secret clearance, which still takes a few months to get that knocked out, or at least to get your temporary before you get started. And so, you got to go through USA jobs. It's very laborious. There's a lot of bureaucratic nonsense in there. There's always a delay when the organization is talking back at you. So it is hard people getting in. But I think, the stuff that interests me a little bit more is the actual training that they're getting, like once they get in. So there's kind of like two separate things here. There's one, can we open up the spigot enough to get people into the force that they're trying to do? And then two is like, once they're in, what is the actual training that these guys are receiving, or ladies, whoever, before they're actually in the force and on the line. And ICE is interesting, because like ICE is not an old organization. It's 20 years old, right? It comes out of Homeland
Yeah.
Security, right? So Homeland Security is like going on 22 years here now. And it's part of the giant, federal bureaucracy. And it's my previous experience with ICE is actually is kind of funny. Right. So I was a Green Beret. I joined the military in 2006, early 2006. I originally took an intelligence job, which is also funny because my recruiter was trying to get me to go straight into being a Green Beret. And I was like, no, those guys are fucking crazy. I wouldn't want to do that. I just want to, do an intel job and help out. And so it was only after a couple years in, I decided to go try out. And then so I was a Green Beret for about a decade, and halfway through that, I transitioned into like a more senior position where you do intelligence stuff. And part of that was going to Washington and interfacing with all the other members of the national intelligence community, right? There's like 17 agencies or whatever, maybe it's 18 now. They're all part of the national intelligence community. It's this big thing. And you go down there and you do 2 weeks and you do like a meet and greet where you go around and you meet all the other government organizations and in particular the intelligence people. So like you spend a day at the FBI, you go over and you meet the guys at the agency, you go to State Department, you go to DIA, you meet with the NSA guys, literally everybody that has an intelligence organization. So you do this for 2 weeks, and everybody's got their own little culture and little vibe and stuff like that. So I remember like the FBI guys were awesome. Meeting with all of them, they were like, "We are so overworked. We'd love like if any of you guys are looking at it for a career change, you know." And this is a group of like 40 Green Berets who are there, all doing this at the same time as a cohort, and they're like, "Oh, we'd love to have you. You know, the state people were super nice. I met a woman who I had really helped me out in my later career at the NCTC, right? National Center for Terror or National Counterterrorism Center, NCTC. She was awesome. Meet a bunch of analysts, all this stuff. And so you do this for like 2 weeks. And the last day, they were like the last group, and we were all in like a hotel. It wasn't even like we went to where they work or anything. It was like ICE and Border Patrol, right? And like we're all cracked out. I've been wearing a suit. It's hot for like 2 weeks straight, meeting all these. And the ICE guys came in, and this is a group of veteran Green Berets, and they didn't give us like a capabilities brief or anything. They literally they were there for about an hour, and they showed us like what you would call like a hype video, right? It was like, this is all the stuff that ICE does. Border control is awesome, and it was like really, really graphic. A lot of it,
Like what was in it? What were they showing?
It was like literally like this is like the height of ISIS too. So they had like a voiceover come on, and they were like, the future of conflict is going to be in cities and being able to control this and that. And it was very spooky watching it. And we're all like, I'm telling it's like a group of veteran Green Berets, and we're just like, what the fuck is this? Like, who are these guys? And I had no
sorting out
interaction with
like
them
domestic. ICE like goes and kicks down the doors of like domestic.
It looked like these, it looked like stormtrooper shit, And they had like the ICE guys in the videos were wearing glasses, right? Like, that's topical, obviously. And everybody in the video that they were like cracking the skulls and stuff looked like brown people. Like it was like very, very jarring. So I'm looking around like, who the fuck are these clowns? Anyway, so that was like literally my first experience with ICE, and I was just like, whatever. Like not.
That's very disconcerting.
I know. This is 2014. You know what I mean?
Right.
This is or 2014 or 2015. So this is an organization like they're clearly. And what happens is in these organizations, like everybody has a niche, everybody has a vibe, everybody has a culture. All these things. It happens even within special operations. We're all the same, but everybody has their own cultural thing. And they are clearly. I don't know if they thought this was good for recruiting or whatever, or they thought this is maybe their stock footage that they show people. But obviously for us, we were just like, oh, okay, cool. Talk to you guys later. And so it was totally wild at that time. But just as a nobody and a veteran, my impression of that is like, man, these guys are really trying to, they're trying to put on a show for somebody, either to validate what they're doing or to recruit or to find a niche in this, monstrous bureaucracy of all these federal agencies. And I was like, God damn, all right, not gonna, probably won't see those guys again.
Yeah, that's fascinating that was like
a decade
under
later.
Obama too. Yeah, under Obama.
Pre-Trump ICE.
Right.
Oh
so
yeah,
that's
no.
Pre-Trump.
This is so it's like the history of Homeland Security and all this stuff was from 20, 25 years ago it was not fraught but complicated. And to get anything off the ground and moving in this sort of organization, when you're competing against the FBI, when you're competing against the agency, when you're competing against anybody who wants to go into special operations, like there's like a marketplace here for people who like either law enforcement or people want to do this stuff. So that was the lane they fell into, and now the wars are over. You know what I mean? And I don't know. It's like you don't have to read too much history to see that when major conflicts start to tail off, any sort of policing environment or paramilitary or military, like shit gets a little sideways. It's kind of been that way forever. So I don't know if that has, an impact as to what's going on. But anyway, so that was like my initial experience of it. So when I saw these guys, now coming to the fore, I was just like, well, yeah, it was only a matter of time.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Oh man. So, I mean, it sounds like you're kind of painting a history of ICE being this way culturally. Because, I mean, I think someone like me, I don't want to speak for you, Jay, but at least someone like me has looked at the stuff with, the congresswomen dressing up in tactical gear and going on ICE photo ops, et cetera. And I think I would have been
Chrissy
inclined to
Noem,
think,
you
like,
mean?
yeah, thank you. Yeah. I think I would have been inclined to previously, oh yeah, Christine, thank you, think this is like a new kind of perversion of ICE's duty under the, clown show that is the Trump administration. But it sounds like you're saying that this like basic culture of like ostentation and like vague sort of like Gestapo aesthetics goes back much longer and predating the sort of like Trump era of ICE, which is, I think, would surprise a lot of people. Certainly surprises me. I don't know about you, Jay.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's the other part where you get to start to talk about the uniforms. Is I also think this is a profound, this is as a crusty veteran, this is nothing infuriates me more than we called it. What'd you call it? ICE fashion show, operator cosplay is what I call it, right? And there's a legacy here where on a macro level. War, conflicts, all that stuff, like, pre basically the end of Vietnam or whatever, like special operations and people who are like what we're calling operators, which is what I did on a very average level, were weirdos and outcasts. There was not glorifying about the individual in military stuff. Like if you wanted to be a badass in World War II or in any previous conflict, you were trying to be like like a Navy commander or something, And if I went back in time, and told my grandfather who was in the Navy in D-Day and was like, yeah, I wore some cool shit and did patrols in Afghanistan, he'd be like, well, sure. Like, I took over islands and led like a fleet. Nice, cool, good for you, like that. It's a recent development in the wars that I experienced in, and part of that is because these were not wars of movement. These were wars of, to use a loaded term, occupation. But at least they were, the space that we were trying to contain was pretty well defined. So you had, counterinsurgency, bottom up, unconventional warfare stuff, which I did a lot of. You had counterterrorism, top down, like kicking in doors and all that stuff. And it glorified the operator, right? So we just spent 25 years glorifying people like me, for better or for worse. And I maintain I was a bang average Green Beret, right? Nothing fancy, good career and all that stuff. But I was no fucking superhero, right? But we really glorified all that stuff. And so, initially, SF guys in NOM or in irregular forces, all the dudes that went in like 02 and 03 to Afghanistan, like you wore crazy uniforms and irregular uniforms or the uniform of the guy you were with because you lived out of a fucking backpack for like 3 months at a time, right? That's the genesis for all this like irregular stuff. And then over time, obviously that kind of became in vogue. And it became like a classist thing in the military where I would walk around, I could go to any post, not wear headgear, wear a sanitized uniform, have a beard, all that shit, right? And it was like, that's the cool guy, right? The operators are the cool guys, okay? And that just has kind of bled out into any sort of what you want to call it, law enforcement tactical culture or any of that stuff, right? So the reason these guys are wearing my uniform from 15 years ago is because they think it's fucking cool. And
but you think that's the only reason is like it's like because we saw it during like we saw it during protests too, right? During Black Lives Matter and stuff like that. And Radley Balco did a lot of good work on this about like the military surplus stuff being sold off to police departments, the tanks that you saw, the MRAPs that you saw in Ferguson, for example, they're all military surplus stuff. The thing I remember the best out of that was that there was like a police department, I believe it was in Vermont, who got an MRAP, and they they put together this crazy ass YouTube video of like this MRAP doing donuts in the snow and stuff like
That's
that.
awesome.
With crazy ass music playing. But yeah, I mean, like it's an interesting idea, right? That basically what happened was that like guys who wear cool stuff became the center of it, especially after like Bin Laden and the Navy SEALs, but even before that, right? The Navy SEAL glamorization and glorification happened before that, and that basically, if you're in law enforcement, you want to look cool because you want to look like the guys, like what you were wearing back when you were in special forces. And is there any other reasoning behind this, though? Do you think like why are they wearing stuff? Like, you sent us 2 pictures. One of them is of you in what looks like Afghanistan, and you and your teammates there are all wearing crazy ass gear. It does look cool if you're, in like it just looks cool, I will say.
Totally.
I get it. Tyler, did you see the photos? I mean,
Yeah, they're
cool.
awesome. It looks for sure.
Yeah, that was a crazy day. That was like we had an all-day gunfight. Like, that was going up into a valley. Our partner force got in trouble, so I was a Green Beret. I always worked with the partner force, so it'd be like, 10 Green Berets, and then like, a Green Beret SF, or sorry, an Afghan SF team, which could be like 10 or 12 dudes, and then their guys that they were working with, which would be like 50 or 60 regular Afghani guys, and our counterparts, without telling us, went and they got in a gunfight. And so we had to go in there and rescue and bring over all air cover. It was a long day, but it was like it wasn't a routine operation. It was definitely above routine, but it was the type of stuff we did. That was
I gotta
a job.
say, man,
So
your long days look very different than my long days. I gotta be honest.
You're in a gunfight, right, in Afghanistan,
Yeah.
and that's what you're wearing. And then you sent us photos of ICE agents in Sacramento where they're wearing desert camo, and it's which I don't know, and then in LA as well, which I guess both areas
Gotta blend into the parking lot, Jay.
They do have some rocky areas, but they seem to be wearing exactly more or less what you're wearing. Like, can you first of all, can you just tell us what they're wearing? Like what is the gear that they have on? Like, they have these crazy ass helmets on. Obviously, they're masks, as everyone knows. It seems like they have these black vests on that have a whole bunch of tactical gear attached to them. Like, from your eye, like what are you seeing here?
Yeah, I mean, these look like guys who are about to load up onto a helicopter and go like do a raid in Iraq or Afghanistan circa 2011. And so what you have is you have your ops core helmet. I like they have nods mounts, so you can see the mounts. That's where you would put your night vision goggles on. And then you have your kit. You have your armor plate, which they used to be big and bulky, and then we got like sleeker ones, so they're wearing those. You have your mag pouches there. I like how they have dump pouches on their legs, so that means you're going to do an actual magazine change, because that's where your magazine goes once you do that. So they're anticipating that they're going to be putting some rounds down. I see my one guy with zip ties, which is appropriate probably for what he's doing. A bunch of flashbang grenades or grenade pouches with pens or dip. More importantly, is usually what would go in there. The weapons they have are not exactly uniform, but I do see some guys with suppressors, and then sidearms.
Why do they have suppressors? Like, what the fuck do they need suppressors for?
Well, I mean, the reason you have a suppressor is so you don't, when you're shooting next to your buddy, his ears aren't ringing. But it looks like
the cries of the civilians. Clearly, I guess.
Exactly right. It looks like they have Peltors, so it looks like they have the noise canceling headphones, which Jay got to wear in Las Vegas.
Oh yeah, those are so cool.
That's good. So again, that's for like being in a gunfight. Anyway, so that they're all kitted up here, ready to go. But it looks damn near exactly like what I used to wear, minus the mask, of course. And then the guys wearing, just a black undershirt, that's fine. I mean, that's just police stuff. But the thing, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we can talk about for this. But the first thing would be, there are federal agencies, so they're also wearing badges that say police, which is kind of disingenuous if you're a federal agent. And also, like, the people I who are getting totally hosed in this are regular cops. Like, if I love my regular cops, like dudes wearing fucking patent leather shoes, starched blue shirt, right? Bad haircut. You know what I mean? A beat cop that's got to get out and like live and work in his community all the time with all the pressures that takes. People have been hating on cops for fucking decades. It's a tough job. Like people want to hate on cops, get it, check, don't like authority, all that stuff, understood. But like, go talk to your beat cop in your town, your local dudes. If just see what's up. Those guys, it's a shitty job. It's a tough job, right? So they're out there working, grinding wherever they're grinding, and these guys come in dressed like fucking operators, right, running around willy nilly. I would be pissed if I were a cop, and this gets into the mass stuff, which is total horseshit.
Right. We'll get to that. We'll get to
that
later. Yeah.
Anyway, so it's silly.
I mean, I kind of have a question about the cop thing. Without being too specific, I have a family member who was both Army Ranger and then went on to be a police officer. And, I think one of the things that he would always point out is that the difference in the training that he received as a Ranger who saw combat and what a police officer receives is just, the gulf is astronomical, right? And that people imagine police as these like Jedi-like warriors, and like the average police officer can't hit the side of a barn with their handgun, And so something he would always point out is that there's like this real training problem. Like the average police officer, and he was state police, so like a higher echelon of police, and still the training is just so much less than what you would imagine. And so I guess the question I just have for you, I mean, I don't know what ICE training is like, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's much less than a Green Beret or an Army Ranger or whatever. I mean, do you have concerns about these people being given all of this militarized equipment, presumably with like a lesser degree of training and certainly a lesser degree of combat experience in stressful situations, et cetera, than the people who this gear is actually designed for, running around in American cities? I mean, that just seems to me to be a recipe for disaster. I don't know what you think about that. I mean, and how much, training these people are actually, I mean, do you think these are well-trained people, or do you think they're, just being given a bunch of ex-military equipment? And, I mean, what do you think?
No, it's a really important point in that, the greatest myth with any sort of, law enforcement or, I don't want to call it gun culture, but the idea that shooting guns is easy and they're like lasers is just like, it's something people don't think about. And so if you have any sort of approximation or like a concept that like people are going to be able to hit shit, especially when shit is moving, it's like, it's not going to happen. It's really hard. It takes a lot of fucking training. So I totally agree. Like, I think cops, for what they do for walking around with sidearms, like I talked to them, about how much training they get for shooting. And I got lots and lots of training for shooting in I was a sniper, but also for doing what you call CQB, close quarters combat, like going into houses. And it's a shit show, man. It's really hard. It takes like a lot of time and a lot of practice to be able to do it. So I completely agree. Like cops never get the amount of training they get. They usually go to like one or two flat ranges every now and then. Ammo's expensive, range time is expensive, all that shit. So the idea that the guys are going to be able to hit shit is a problem. If you go to the website, and I did check because I don't know any ICE agents. They're basically going through, it looks like, maybe 4 months or half a year of training, but it's like survey training, right? You come in, and what I suspect it's like a pipeline. You do 12 weeks and then you do 16 weeks where you learn. You would have blocks of that time that would be classroom time where you're like, this is what ICE does. This is where we fit in the agency. They probably have medical training. They probably like all the regular shit. Like, these are all the organizations we have. So the idea that they would be doing 6 months of range time is crazy. So they're getting to their force, and they're essentially privates, right? They're federal agents, and I don't know, maybe it takes them a year to get through that pipeline, but that's not too different than a lot of military occupations where you come in and you go through your initial pipeline, and then you go to your unit and you get like really shitty jobs for a long time, right? Until you're like trustworthy. Or if you're infantry, you go and you just go to the range all the time. Now, like, if you're doing, anything I did, multiple years of training, even if you're Ranger bat, or Marines, anything like, it's well, not Marines, but like anything in special operations, the FBI guys, like to go in I think it's called HRT, do the Hosky Recce stuff the FBI does. And again, like, bet those dudes, awesome. Really, really professional. You got to do 3 years in the force. So like you got to be an FBI agent for whatever it is, 3 or 4 years, and then you go through a pipeline of training, and that training is like a year and a half. And at some point in there, you do like 6 weeks of like weapons training or whatever. And I don't know if that's exactly right for the FBI. I suspect it would be like that. My shooting schools were usually like a month long, and we do them right before deployment. And you need that much time to be tactically proficient. So the idea that they're going to be able to do anything on a tactical level is insane. And then the last thing I'll say, sorry, is like it's obvious that this is all cosplay because when they're out there, they're not moving around like you would tactically, right? So it's like,
Right.
right? It's like you wouldn't do that tactically. First off, you would wear plain
But what are
clothes
they doing
because
that's not tactical? Like, give an example here.
I will tell you in a second. So, like,
Yeah.
first off, if I was gonna go snatch somebody, right, I would not wear a fucking operator uniform around the middle of the streets where everybody's gonna see you, right? Okay, so like on a tactical level, it's insane. Like you wouldn't do that. You know what you do? You would like do what the FBI does. You'd wear like plainclothes shit, and you'd have your badge in your pocket and a sidearm, and you would walk around in plainclothes in order to be able to do that. Anybody who's been to an intelligence school has gone through all that. Anybody who's worked, I know, for the FBI or for anything that's working domestically has done that kind of shit. So you wouldn't dress up like GI Joe. And then secondly, like the obvious example here is the show of force in the park they did, where they all get online, in that park in LA, and they just walk across the fucking park with the horse behind them. The only time I ever walked across in a straight line like that in the military is at the end of a range session to pick up brass because you have to return all your brass. So anybody who's shot at a range in the military knows that's what that looks like. You all get online, you touch your fingertips, and you walk down to pick up all the brass. So it means that they're not being serious tactically. And if you're not being serious tactically, then why do you got to wear a fucking tactical uniform? You know what I mean?
Right.
Which means
And
it's
like a show of
just all
force, I
kabuki.
guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's. I
Yeah.
mean, I guess my concern with this number of 10,000 new agents, right, which is a huge expansion of what it is right now, and the fact that Stephen Miller has these quotas that he keeps yelling about, right, that the ICE agents have to go fulfill these quotas, and that's part of the reason why they're raiding like every Home Depot in LA, or why they're going into some workplaces, or why they're showing up in immigration court in New York City and just because they like those are places where they can pick up people to fulfill these quotas, and they don't at this point have any interest in due process or anything like that. They can just do it. And so the problem that they have right now is that even with all of this, they aren't going to get anywhere close to the number that Trump promised in terms of deportations and mass deportations, right? And so their problem is they just don't have enough agents to do this, and they don't have enough manpower or really ability unless they go actually raid real workplaces, which like they still have not done like a lot of, right? Like they could go into a chicken plant in the Midwest and they could pick up 200 people immediately, right? Like you see some of this stuff in farm communities in California where they're doing that, and then you see Trump kind of like waving back and forth on whether he wants to do that or not. And it just seems like at this point there's two realities that exist. The first is like the fact that they can't actually do this, right? So they're gonna have to fast track a bunch of yahoos, I think, who will not have any type of training, who just want to go in there and maybe they'll watch the same video that you watched in 2014. They want to bust some brown heads, right? And then you have this thing where it's just like, okay, we have to put on a show for how serious we are. And that's like the second part of it that we're talking about now, which is like the stupid fashion show shit they're doing, the tweets that DHS puts out, which are just like I don't know who that's for, except for like maybe 20,000 like sickos on Twitter who just like they're like 22-year-olds and they're like literally in their mom's basement, like have no actual politics, or just like, you know, antisocial losers who like to tweet racist shit. And then and that part of it has almost nothing to do with the actual getting people out of the country, right? Like because like some of the stuff that they do is similar to what you're talking about, right? When they picked up the woman at Tufts, for example, they were all in plain clothes, they all had masks on, right? When they picked up Mahmoud Khalil at Columbia, they were in plain clothes, right? But that seems to be going
Right.
away in some ways, right? Now they are showing up in all this gear, and they say, well, look at what happened in LA, we need to do this. There's and in some ways, I feel like what's going to happen is that because it's hard to get these 10,000 agents through the system, as you said, right? They can fast track them, but there's only so much fast tracking you can do, right? Because you're, as you said, you're dealing with like the federal government at some level, right? You can't just like deputize all these dudes and throw them out there. Maybe you can, but like, it would be a difficult process. I
In the
wonder if
you know,
now it's just like the
and I don't
show is
know.
what
Yeah,
matters. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Like
I
that's what
mean,
it seems like.
this is. I mean, if you want to recruit, you know, if you're trying to enlarge your force, I'm sure this appeals to a lot of people. You're on the news. Like I said, the wars are over. So, well, in my limited perspective. So if you're trying to recruit, yeah, we're where the action is. Like you're going to be able to probably recruit pretty well if you do this kind of stuff. I don't know if it's the people you'd want, but you'd be able to drum up your numbers more if you're in the news every day and you get to, dress like an operator and go out and do what you think is right for your country.
Yeah, yeah. Law enforcement in general has this huge recruiting problem right now. Period. Right, and then of course the military right now is having trouble too. And it just seems like you can have all this rhetoric, but it's like, the people who are going to join the military are mostly mostly immigrants at this point, or like kids of immigrants or whatever. And so I don't know. I can't imagine that this recruiting problem is going to continue. I mean, the announcement that they're offering $50,000 for anyone to come back, that was from like 2 days ago. They're still having a recruitment problem for this. I don't think it's all just like people see what's on TV and they're like, I don't want to be an ICE agent because it's bad. I agree with you. I think there are parts of the country where this is very appealing, and there, not even parts of the country. I'm sure there are people in Berkeley like who like little like 22-year-olds who see this and like, fuck yeah, this is what I voted for. But they're not gonna go be ICE agents. You know what I mean? Like, like, like
Yeah,
they're gonna play fucking Fortnite.
yeah.
So they still have this recruitment problem. And I don't know. I guess when we talked about it earlier, Tyler, right? Like during the election, like I think we both said, and I don't mean to do this thing where we like mostly when we look in the past, we just sort of point out where we were wrong. But in this, we said, I think we both agreed that this was basically just gonna be a cruelty show, right?
Yeah.
It was gonna be a giant cruelty show. And now I think you saw it with Trump's like ridiculous military parade, right? Patrick, if you have takes on that, then let us know. But like basically all this is like a military show, and he's doing like weird kind of sad strongman stuff, and then a whole bunch of people are going to suffer because of it. But 10,000 more ICE agents, I don't know. I think that's going to take a little bit of time.
Well, this is also like I was so the first job I had when I joined in '06, I took an intel job and I was an interrogator. So I was human intelligence. And this was post Abu Ghraib, right? So Abu Ghraib happens, it's a shit show. The Department of Defense correctly identifies this is not good, right? maybe slightly different than right now, right? They're like, okay, this is not good. This is a problem. We need to fix it. So they fixed it in a very Department of Defense way. They're like, we need 5,000 new interrogators all trained up. They built this manual that I had to memorize and learn by heart. That took me 8 months. That was the training for that job, and it was like highly programmed, highly regimented. Like I said, like military style, like nobody will conduct interrogations except you if you have this specific training, yada, yada, yada. And so they did that, and they put that, those requirements down, and then they recruited us, and I took that job. And we all got to the training, and they could only put through like 80 people at a time. And so I spent 5 months in Arizona. I don't know if you remember, Jay, doing nothing, like just
Oh, no,
waiting.
I do remember this.
Yeah, I would go to details. They'd be like, go clean this, go clean this. So that was like my first 5 months after basic was like cleaning shit in Arizona, which is a very military experience, good for the soul. And before I could even get into the class, because they were like, we need all these people. But obviously the infrastructure takes time to keep up. So if they were to draft in, if they took 10,000 people off the street tomorrow, they would still only have the infrastructure to be able to go through the school they have, which I believe is called, it's either FET or FLETC, whatever it is, a federal law enforcement training, which is like, 20, 24, 26 weeks. They'd only be able to put so many people through that. They won't have instructors. Anyway, so it's like, it's all like, and we did eventually in DOD. It took a while, but you do catch up, and like you pump people through, and the thing that happens is people like me have to sit and wait and kick rocks for 5 months. But eventually, in 2 years, you have enough people in the force who are trained to do that, so that you're not committing war crimes. At least that's how it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
But if you want to commit the crimes, then I don't know. Maybe you can pump people through a lot quicker.
That it does seem like there is a scenario here. I don't know what you think, Tyler. It does seem like there's a scenario here where they just actually do deputize all these yahoos, put them in like tactical gear, and take a big photo, right? And like do social media videos of them raiding Home Depots or whatever. Like that does also seem like a possible outcome
Totally
because
possible.
it's just about show. If they wanted to actually get rid of everyone has pointed this out, but it's true. If they actually wanted to decrease the number of undocumented immigrants in America, they would only do workplace raids, right? And they would screw over a ton of businesses outside of like whatever questions about the people themselves, which obviously are also looming, right? But in the most like just craven way, you're just like, you can't do that because all these business owners will complain to Trump, and a lot of these places are not exactly in blue states only, right? And so like he can't do that, and he can waffle back and forth, but until they start raiding chicken plant after chicken plant, meat processing plants, and I feel like this is mostly a gigantic show with some like weird quotas underneath it. Okay, Tyler, what do you think?
No, man, I think, the right lens to understand a great deal of stuff with Trump is just as entertainment, and I think a lot of this is entertainment, which is not to say that there aren't all of these extraordinarily cruel, negative externalities of that entertainment. And I'm not, by calling it entertainment, I'm not trying to diminish that there are real people that are impacted by his policies. But I think at a certain level, it is just, this giant show that is made for television to make it seem as though there's this giant roundup going on, when the reality is that there's not exactly an unprecedented level of deportations happening. And there's just a lot of sort of ostentatious, Gestapo theatrics that is being fed to, the Fox News set to sort of placate them. So no, I mean, I agree. And that's, like I said, not to diminish that there are real people being impacted, but it does seem like a huge part of this is just like what is going to play well on TV. And it certainly seems possible that, I mean, I have no trouble believing that Trump wouldn't let a bottleneck of the sort of like, training variety stop him from getting the number of ICE agents he wants, even if that means, recalibrating or fast tracking that training in ways that are, dubious and questionable. Another question I have, I guess, is just about, so you point out that this like ICE culture dates back to at least 2014. I guess the question I have is like, to what extent do you think this is just a symptom of the sort of, I mean, I think you called it operator cosplay, but just like the broader fetishization of special forces and this kind of operator cosplay you're talking about. As people listen to the show know, I'm one of the sort of Second Amendment-y Democrats. I own a bunch of guns. I'm interested in guns, etc. And one thing I get inundated with on Instagram is just like gun operator cosplay Instagram shit, where it's like tactical baby carrier is my favorite one. But there's like also,
Wait,
I follow
is that a real thing? Tactical baby carrier?
Oh, dude.
Yeah, I've seen them.
Yeah. I've been since I had a kid. I've been. Like,
I've seen them. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get these ads. I got them for like a year. Tactical baby carrier, and then I finally saw one in person. It's like, oh shit, it's the tactical baby carrier.
yeah.
He's got it. Yeah. Wait. So the thing I have to tell you about the tactical.
Wait, what
baby
makes
carrier,
it tactical?
It just has like the tactical like pouches.
Because
and, like,
it
has pouches. Okay,
it's
like
Molly.
It's
Molly gear. Yeah,
it's Molly. Yeah.
Hooker on it. Come on, man. That's tactical.
So the amazing thing about the tactical baby carrier is the baby is in the front, so like the baby's just gonna take the bullet, like,
so the baby can do your mag changes.
Yeah, exactly.
You put the magazine pouches on the baby, and then you can pull your sidearm up, and the baby will do the mag change for you. They're ready to go,
dude. But like, there's so much of this on Instagram, and I say this is a Second Amendment predisposed person, but it's like actually shocking to me. And I mean, you see all these gun companies. I don't, there's one or two. One of them is actually pretty liberal, so I don't want to call them out in particular because in general, I think they're they're pretty. They're like one of the better, people selling this.
They're
sort of
the
stuff,
woke gun company.
Yeah. They sell these like if you buy shit from them, they send like will package your order with a sticker of like a KKK guy and crosshairs.
Oh, okay.
It is like it's basically a woke gun company. But anyway, they sell like they're always just spamming Instagram with people with like night vision goggles and dressed up in all sorts of bullshit. It's like, and they're like doing their training drills at the range, and it's like you are literally just like a guy in Idaho, like what in the suburbs somewhere. Like, why do you need this helmet and the night vision shit and like all of the, it's like actually astounding. So anyway, this is a long rambling way of saying like, is what we're seeing with ICE just downstream from this broader fixation that the public has, not simply with like special forces, but also like all this weird tactical shit that seemingly infuses like broad swaths of the sort of like, gun culture or just like conservative spectrum of American culture. I mean, I don't know. Like, do you think that it's just like a broader cultural problem that ICE is one manifestation of?
Yeah, for sure. It's like a wing, tactical stuff is a wing of, gun culture, as we're calling it. And that's because, like I said earlier, like we had all these companies that made this stuff. You had practical application of all this stuff for 20 years. You know what I mean? So like, just like if Jay and I are watching tennis or whatever, we're gonna see all the equipment that's being used there and be like, oh man, I got to get that racket. And if you like guns and you want to go to the range and you want all the cool gear, just like, I play golf. If you're a golfer, I see it all the time, right? People all swagged up with all their golf gear. Do you need all that stuff that a tour pro uses? Absolutely fucking not. Do you buy it anyways because you like gear? Yep. So it's like, there's a structural thing too where people just like gear. It does seem to be much less ironic in gun culture. You know what I mean? Like, I know that I can't hit, I can't hit a 300-yard drive, even though I'm using a tour driver. I know that. I do meet some of these guys and I look at me and I'm like, you can't really do that shit. And so that they might believe it a little bit more. But yeah, there was a zillion companies. If you go to any SHOT Show, they're all there. There are a million companies that started in the last 25 years during the wars to make really boutique-y shit to either get that contract or sell to operators and things who are like that. That's just permeated a marketplace, and guess what? People will fucking buy it. So it's like it's just kind of here to stay as far as I see it.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, you see that everywhere though now. It's like, I guess it is. Maybe it is Instagram. Maybe it's social media driven too, because it shows you the image and then immediately gives you a link to buy it, right? And that it can sort of idolize certain things. I don't know. I see it in tennis, not so much, right? You buy these rackets, but then you're right, Patrick. Like, if you are a mildly intelligent person or have any self awareness, you buy like the Babolat arrow that like Alcaraz and Nadal used to use, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm getting more topspin on this bitch now because I got the. But you're doing it as a joke because you're not hitting the ball with any topspin. Like,
and it's not, and you can't murder anybody with a tennis racket.
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
that's the obvious.
The obvious
underlying in all this stuff is that these are weapons of war. They'll fucking kill you. And
right. I guess it makes sense.
To get into that space is, it's different. It's why it's different, and it should be alarming when it's trivialized, which it clearly is, just by the practice of putting all these things through all the outlets that Tyler is talking about.
So do you think these ICE dudes are like buying their shit off Instagram then and just like putting it on?
That's what I thought, but then I looked at a lot of the pictures and it does look kind of uniform. So there's like small variances in it, but I bet you they're getting the uniforms for sure. And then some of them are clearly, like, all their helmets were the same. So they're getting kit. So like, I don't know if that's guys who are senior. I don't know if that's different offices. I don't know if it like, they put in the order for all the ICE kit from all the decom stuff they found in a warehouse from the Army once upon a time, and they only got the first order of 800, so they pushed them out. Like that could be a whole nother thing. The people, I thought at first it was just going to be all jabronis and plainclothes and like wearing half uniforms, but some of the pictures I was looking at the last couple of days, it does look like there's a level of uniformity to them, and so they can get that in. Like, that's a lot of that stuff has been standardized by the bigger Army, by big DoD and the Marines and the rest of the force. So like getting a pair of tactical pants in a tactical shirt is not that hard. It's not like it was in 2009 where they only gave a few of them out and there was one company making them, or 2004 or whatever. So I suspect that they're probably getting some uniform, dispersal given to them.
Yeah, I mean, I will say in defense of these dudes, in case any of them are listening who buy this stuff, I will say when I tried the stuff out with at my bachelor party, it was cool, man.
Yeah, you get to look cool.
There are these headphones.
It's great.
There are these headphones that we were wearing with a helmet, and we were staying at the Venetian, which is very big rooms, right? And I would stand in like one corner of the hotel room, and then Patrick, our friend Chad, would go stand in the other and whisper. And I could hear what they were saying through the fucking headphones. And I was just like, how the fuck is this possible? You know? And then you're like, I felt like I was in a video game, right?
Dude, $2,000 seems like a pretty good price for that technology. I'm going to be honest. Like,
yeah, that's before that. You know, with the head, $3,000 out the door. Out the door, $3,000. That's before the nods. The nods are going to be the most expensive part. So just the helmet with the kit, $3,000 out the door. I can get you. If you want to start getting an optics, then you get into crazy town.
Right.
I almost had. Yeah.
If you're getting like a $50,000 signing bonus, you got to spend it somewhere, right? And
right. Well, that'd be hilarious if it's like a draw. They're like, hey, you get $50,000 up front, but you got to pay for your own uniforms. Like you work at Burger King or some shit. The guy's like, oh, god damn it. He's got a choice of what it.
They get like the plastic Amazon helmet. Yeah.
He's like, I can't roll up in the plastic helmet.
The guys with all the kit are the one who laid out all their money, and like the guys with like a wife and family are showing up with the plastic helmet and the jeans. Just like, man, I spent that $50,000 like 10 years ago, brother.
I know. I got daycare I gotta pay for. I'm not trying to
can't afford the metal helmets.
I'm not trying to buy these headphones.
Yeah.
All right, let's end here talking about masks. Tyler, why don't you bring this up? Because Tyler and I had an argument over text yesterday, but it wasn't really an argument. I was just actually misunderstanding what he was saying. But Tyler, you had something you wanted to ask in terms.
So, like, I think the thing that conservatives will say about the ice guys in masks that I think is the like in the realm that is probably the most persuasive to like an uninformed person is like, oh, they need the masks because otherwise they will be doxxed, you know? And this is something you hear routinely rolled out on Fox News, et cetera. And for a whole host of reasons, I think, you know, not the least of which is that like when you take on this kind of responsibility to be a law enforcement officer or whatever it is, like that comes with certain risks that are associated with your job. And that doesn't mean that you get to impinge on the freedom of other people, like, you know, to like mitigate those risks in every scenario, right? And so like my point of view is like, you know, even if it were true that they were being doxxed left and right, I still don't think that is like a legitimate reason to have sort of masked Gestapo-like people rounding people up. But what do you make of that argument? Because it is the one that conservatives will always point out, that like they'll say, oh, well, these people are going to get doxxed and they'll be harassed at their homes and they'll be threatened and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So like, you know, I presume you don't think that's a reasonable argument. So like why, you know, what like rejoinder would you give to the people who are going to make that kind of a case? Because it's the more sober, you know, case that you see, or it's like at least the one that's in the ballpark of like a justification rather than fuck you, we can do what we want, you know?
Yeah, it's total horseshit. First off, as a Bowdoin government major and a University of Chicago grad, these people are not conservatives. These people are not conservatives, right? They have no respect for history or institutions, so they can't be conservatives. All right, so we can't call them conservatives. Call them what you want, but they're not conservatives in the classical sense of the term. It's total horseshit, man. It's total horseshit. It's like anybody who's been a cop or has been in law enforcement, or has been in the American military, you know, has been put in the line of fire in great danger to themselves and their peers constantly. You know, frequently with a shaved face, in order to show that you are abiding the rule of law. Everything that goes into that, all the history that goes into that. And it's just that, like I said earlier, like tell that to any fucking cop who's been working a beat for 15 years. Tell that to guys like, you know, a guy working the subway in the city who's got to pull crazy motherfuckers off the subway nonstop. You know what I mean? Tell him, that. It's like, it's a disgrace. It's really insulting. It's insulting to the professionalism of the trade. You know what I mean? That I can't be professional enough to execute the job that I was giving, you know, without hiding my identity. You know what I mean? It's just such horseshit. If like, you know, so I think it's total BS. It's total BS. And it really, it obfuscates the mission, like even if you are working for ICE and you're trying to do the right thing, obscuring an identity like that, it's completely ahistorical, and it's not what we've done. I shouldn't say that, but I don't know. It's bullshit.
Yeah. That makes a great deal of sense. I guess one thing I wanted to ask as a follow up to that, unrelated to the mask thing, is like, you made the point earlier that it's offensive to both, you pointed out, police officers who have these people just like patrolling their streets in desert camo and loitering in their parking lots for no reason, but also to like this like operator cosplay is offensive to people like yourself who served in combat overseas in one of these units. I guess I'm just curious at a macro level. I think the public, or at least the kind of like liberal-ish public, tends to think that the military is like very conservative, and I think there's a certain kind of person who might imagine that some people in the military might think be on the side of the deportations and think it's really cool what ICE is doing, etc. But it sounds like you think like you obviously think it's like very offensive, but you also think there's like do you think in general there are a lot of people who were in your kind of work that view what's going on right now, regardless of their politics or how they feel about immigration, that like think all of this cosplay that's going on is ridiculous? Or like, what do you think the temperature is within sort of like the special forces or just the military in general with respect to the National Guard being deployed and these ICE agents dressed up like, special forces operators, et cetera? Like, do you have a sense as to, how that community is thinking about what we're seeing on TV?
Probably not right now. So anything I say to follow this would be an impression of like all the people that I worked with and that were involved with. So to be purely accurate, I would say no, I'm not currently there. But my interpretation of my impression of it would be like we would be laughing at these guys and calling them fucking clowns in our team room. You know what I mean? We'd be like, why is that guy wearing my uniform tackling dudes in a strawberry field? Like, what a fucking clown, Like that is legitimately the conversations that we've had there. We'd be making fun of each other. If somebody fucked something up, we'd be saying you could always go to ICE, take your uniform with you. Like it's a really that is the culture that permeates that community. It is like you have to be super thick-skinned. The reason you go through all that training and everything is so you have that mentality that which lends itself to being openly hostile towards each other quite frequently. And so if I anybody now, there would be a small portion of it who are just like anywhere else, who would be very far right, who probably think it's awesome. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And they probably would like to tackle people in a strawberry field, but the vast majority of it would be, from everything I know, it'd be like, come on, man, who are these clowns? Which is why, they probably have to be super aggressive because they understand that. And it's like, that's kind of gets back to the roots of the whole organization to begin with, is like the FBI wouldn't be doing this, but the FBI has a long culture that they've built, for better or for worse, and has a very rigorous, operational culture to it. So it kind of gets back to some of those structural things too. But I text with my friends about it now. Guys who are all special operations guys, and we're clowning on them. We're like, who are these fucking clowns? That's a normal tenor of it. And they could be in like, this sounds all very crass. I'll do the obligatory. I'm sure there's great ICE agents, but it's like it's not fair on them. Like, I don't think it's fair on them. All right, maybe not at this.
No. But
it's not fair on them. It's not fair to them and part of law enforcement to make them wear a fucking mask. And if there's any veterans who are doing it, and you just went through like what we did for the last 20 years, and you slide over there after like routinely patrolling and being in way worse environments than a parking lot in LA, and now you're putting a fucking mask on. It's like, okay.
You feel like there's got to be like some glimmer of self-awareness at that point.
I'll see you when I see you. I'll see you when I see you. You know what I mean? Like,
right. The mask thing, I did some research, into what was happening. It does seem like some of the ICE agents have been doxxed and harassed, but my source here is Fox News, so they were gonna obviously this is not people who are trying to minimize this harm.
They probably had a bounty for every harassed ICE agent.
But exactly. But the one anecdote that Fox News produced was that a guy was worried about his family, which we all have families. We understand why one would be worried about them. And they're like,
who isn't in law enforcement? Who isn't? Who in the military is not afraid?
He had to install $1,200 security camera. I was like, like that's your example. That's why all these dudes have to be in masks and that's the example that you could dredge up. And I'm just like, look, outside of whatever pragmatic thing, Patrick, I think as you pointed out, or maybe Tyler, maybe it's you cannot subvert any type of due process. You cannot subvert the mission that you're doing by basically making it seem shady from the very beginning, right? Like you cannot basically have a paramilitary force in this gear out there with zero way to identify any of the people so that it's all operating in secret, essentially. Like all these things are against the norms of the country. Even abroad, fighting people that we all thought, like fighting people in other countries that have been demonized in whatever type of way. Like even then, right, you didn't do that when you were in Afghanistan. You weren't wearing a mask, right? And so I think that I find it deeply offensive that they're doing this. And I guess, Tyler, I would just say that, like, I think that argument is the one that they could come up with, but I don't think they believe that, right? Like, I don't think that that's the reason why they're doing it. They're doing it because they want to look scary, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, for
they're
sure.
doing it so that when social media pops off, right, and that people start filming these people, that like they can do everything that they want with total impunity and without any type of repercussion at all. Like that's why they're doing it. And I don't know. I just think that if you are worried about a police state, or if you're worried about federal agents running around with guns in your country, snatching people up with zero recourse from anything, including a cell phone camera, then you have to be disturbed by this. And I looked around. I tried to find, like, everyone on the show knows how I feel about opinion polling, which is that I think it's all bullshit. But I tried to find polls about this stuff, but I don't think that this particular thing is actually doing anything to help with public sentiment in terms of immigration. It does seem like that issue has swung in itself over the past few months. And I think that the point is basically, like, people will say, like, well, there's a way that Trump could do bigger deportations without kicking up all this fighting and with all this scariness or whatever, and all this like gross, like humanitarian disaster shit that they're doing. But, that's not the point. That's not what Stephen Miller wants. Stephen Miller wants to do a little like fucking military type shit and like be in charge of his own little Gestapo. And he wants to troll, he wants to freak out all the libs all the time. And that's who he's been since he was 15 years old, when his entire family decided they fucking hated him. And he's just calcified more into that. And that's what this is about, right? That's why they're wearing the gear, I think. That's why they're wearing the masks. It's all like some fucked up fantasy in some dork's head, right? Like that's what it is. Like let's just.
The thing I would say is that, like, the DoD had to sort a lot of shit out after 03, 04. And like I referenced earlier, there's 16, 17, 1800 other government agencies that are looking at this. You know what I mean? And we're at a moment in time where institutional wisdom and legacies and things like that are highly devalued by federal leadership, or not devalued, like not even taken into account, right? And so you hope that, this type of operation passes, and then, like, legislations and order are put in place. If there is to be a, somebody, doesn't even have to be a Democrat, somebody not in the vein of Trump, who's worried about, running his own policy through whichever means he sees fit. They're going to look at that organization and they're going to put in some rules and regulations to bring it in line. That's usually how this works. That's how it worked, with the agency in the 60s and 70s, how it worked in DOD, 405. Like, there's a history of these federal organizations finally getting their shit together after something like this goes down. We just don't know because we're in the moment, and ICE is a young organization. So, like, they haven't been through that time yet. Maybe this is that time where maybe something's already going down. Who can say? You know what I mean? That would be the optimistic look on it.
Yeah, no, that would be very optimistic that they're trying to professionalize right now. But
there's some HR lady
but
in there,
4 years, in 5 years, in 5 years, they'll be tip top. They'll get all these people through the pipeline, and then in 5 years they'll be tip top and go, man, I remember we have to wear fucking masks to do this shit.
Yeah. That would be quite a change. I think that the chance that it just doesn't exist is probably higher than that. And I don't think there's that much chance that that happens. But like you said, this is all new shit. ICE is new, right? It's not the CIA, it's not the FBI, it's not like the Department of Agriculture or whatever, right? And you know, I think that it'll be interesting to see what happens in 2026, even when after the midterms, see if there's some attempts to curtail some of this stuff. It's the difficulties, and this is the last thing I wanted to underline before we get out of here, is that like if you like this is how hard it was in 2017, which is obviously the first year of Trump, right? They only hired 371 deportation officers that entire year, right? And there were 11,000 applications, and it took 173 days to finalize those hires, right? Like Border Patrol during Trump shrank; it got smaller, right? And so again, like this is a thing that I always bang on a lot, which is like you have to look at the infrastructure and the human infrastructure of some of these things. So basically, everything that the reason I started thinking about was homelessness, right? Which is basically you have all these people coming up with solutions to homelessness. These are people who like work at universities or whatever, and they have all these plans, and then they present them to somebody like Gavin Newsom, and Gavin Newsom's like, that's a good idea, and then he's like, I'm going to pass an $8 billion homelessness spending thing, and then they all get to work, and they're like, okay, who's supposed to do this part? And they're like, we need to hire that person, right? Because that person doesn't exist. And they're like, well, does anyone want to do that job? And they quickly find out, nope, there's not a single person who wants to do that job. And I think that that's going to be I do think it's going to be the bottleneck. And I don't think it's a bottleneck of will. And I don't think it's a bottleneck necessarily of bureaucracy. I mean, will on the part of like Stephen Miller or Donald Trump. It's a bottleneck of like whether or not people actually want to do these types of jobs anymore. And that's a problem that we have forever. Would you rather be like a fucking Twitch screamer screaming at immigrants and like being like a right-wing YouTuber, or would you rather go actually be the ICE deportation officer? Right? Like most people are going to pick the former. And everyone else is just going to be like, I don't know, like it seems like a hard job and everyone's going to hate me. Right. So that also sucks, so yeah, that was my sense of it. Do you have any last thoughts here, Patrick, before we let you go? You've done great in your first stint as the Joe House of the podcast. We'll have you back on to talk about UConn basketball, golf, your other interests.
Yeah.
Any parting thoughts?
No, the only other thing I was going to say was completely unrelated to anything we talked about previously. I was going to tell Tyler that the for coming on the podcast, my one request was to go fishing with you when you go fishing. But the funny thing is that I thought so. When Jay started working with you, or like I first heard, he's like, yeah, he does this fucking crazy fishing thing. He goes out in the middle of North Atlantic. I'm like, for what? He's like stripers. I'm like, he just like walks out there. And Jay's like, yeah, it's this weird thing. And I saw a picture, and like it's you on the rocks holding a fish, right? And I was under the impression that you were like tackling fishes, that you were like jumping off rocks and actually like a human osprey, like going in there and tackling. I was like, hell yeah. Like, yeah, what a fucking like dude lives in Maine. He works in Lewiston and he goes to the North Atlantic and he fucking tackles fishes. I thought it was like the coolest thing in the world. And so a little while back, I don't know when you guys I really thought that you guys were talking about rods and reels, and I got really disappointed. I was like, oh man, he's just catching with a rod and reel. I thought this dude was out there like
tackling a 50-pound striped bass.
tackling stripers in the North Atlantic. I really thought that. So anyway,
that would be pretty hard.
Yeah.
It's hard enough to tackle like catfish,
Yeah. I was very impressed.
Ty, do you have any last thoughts here? Oh no, you're now muted. I can't hear you. Did you mute yourself?
I must have clicked.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
No, not at all. It's been so great having you on, and especially, I mean, talking about not just the sort of like gear that ICE is wearing, but this sort of broader cultural fixation we have on, the operator cosplay stuff is really interesting. It's something that preoccupies me just because my Instagram feed is insane, and I'm always just really fixated on this.
We need a
cultural pathology we have.
Tactical podcast mic, something like that. They need to now that all the special forces guys are podcasters.
I can't. I have a pallet full of ops gear in my basement that I can't get rid of because some ICE agent's gonna buy it, or somebody is gonna,
Just
some
ship it
dude
on
is gonna.
over.
Right, I was like afraid that somebody was gonna go storm the Capitol or be
Oh shit!
tackling people at
With
Home
your
Depot with
stuff.
my old gear. Yeah, so it's just sitting down there. I can't do anything with it. I got like
Uh,
thousands of. I wanted to sell it on eBay when I left active duty, but I can't because somebody's gonna fucking use it.
it's so
you're gonna be
bad.
like, is that my fucking helmet?
Is that my name patch on?
And some dude
Well, the
storming
only
the
thing I have is
Capitol.
I repurposed my war belt for gardening. So I got like, instead of a grenade pouch, I have like my snips. I do keep my dump pouch because that's good for the trim wire for a weed
Yeah.
whacker and stuff like that. So the only
It's the
time I wear that
hardest
stuff is
gardening
when I'm
belt of
doing
all
yard work.
time.
Oh my
It's
god,
crazy.
Patrick! I got it. The bag that I bought this big gear bag for going to soccer practice. Let me tell you, I am kitted out in the craziest way. Like I've
Yeah.
got like electrolyte pouches, I've got like first aid kit, I've got extra shin
Nice.
guards, got turf shoes, extra everything. Um, and I got to say, it's the only thing I've ever been super geary about,
Yeah.
And I starting to see the appeal of it because I don't know, when I was surfing, like I'd just have one wetsuit and basically one board. I wasn't one of these dudes who had like 30 boards. I think I had like
Mhm.
5 at some point, which felt like a ton. But there are dudes who the amount that I was surfing back then, like dudes would have like 8 to 10 boards, and then all sorts of different like wetsuits or whatever. Surfing is not so geary to be completely, it's not like biking or anything like that, so
Yeah.
maybe that's why I missed it. But yeah, in tennis, I don't know, I just have one racket until it gets smashed and then I switch it up. But I could sort of see the gear appeal now, because like, and it is because of Instagram, Tyler. I bought a
Dude, it's
pouch.
nuts.
I bought a pouch to put like shit for soccer practice in, to go inside of the bag, and it's like, well, what do I do in soccer practice? I just sit in a camping chair for an hour and a half, and like think like get mad in my head, it's like, why are you running after that ball? Or I just look at my phone. I don't know why I need so much gear.
With your giant, I'm imagining this bag you're describing as being like desert camo and
Oh no, no,
ginormous. Is it huge?
like, it's a black 50. It is really big. And sometimes the other dads do make fun of me about it. They're like, you don't have
As
like
as they should. As
they're like,
they
well, you
should.
have that in your bag, and I'm like, let me tell you, I do have it in my fucking bag. So
I bet you
I,
wish you had it in your bag, asshole.
yeah, how dare you? Of course, I
Uh,
have that in my bag. Like, what type of hair ties do you need? Got all sorts of hair ties. All right, on that, I know Patrick will be dealing with that soon because he has a daughter, and also,
Dude, Jay, you got to upgrade
wait.
it to a tactical bag, man.
oh, that I didn't put that in his bio at the beginning. At one point, the leading all-time goal scorer for the Bowdoin Polar Bears soccer team. Is that right? Were you the all-time leading goal scorer at some point?
I don't think I was ever all time. I might still be top 5. I might
Top
still be
five.
top 5. I
He
never quite
was
got to the top, but
he was an angry tapping merchant.
yeah, yeah. Our good friend Dave Bulow broke all those records. R.I.P. to our buddy. But yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, thank you for coming on, Patrick. We'll have you
Thanks,
back
man.
on again. And
Yeah, absolute
you
pleasure. Tyler, I'll see you next time I'm in Maine. I'll be up there in fall.
Yeah, let me know, man, for sure. The
yeah,
strappers will
you
be
guys
running.
should do. Maybe I'll fly out there and take a and do it, because I want to do it too. I was like,
Well, it's really fun.
Like, I was like,
well, we could go. The other thing, we could go shoot too. Like,
do you have
I
flippers?
do
Oh,
have
I'd love
friends
that.
in Maine. Yeah, I do have friends in Maine who got some property, and I haven't shot long guns in a long time. So I've been thinking about going up to Maine and doing some of that.
Do you
That'd be
guys
super
wear
fun.
flippers, Tyler? Do you wear flippers while you do it? Or are you wearing?
No. The swims aren't
not
that
wearing
far that you
fins?
need flippers. But it also depends on the time of year, how far you're swimming anyway. Like right now, it's like white shark season. So,
Do you have
keeping it
tactic?
short
Can you-
and trying to stay upright and vertical in the water to not look like a seal. It's
You
the
need-
name
Oh,
of the game
Jesus.
is, being as upright as you
Jesus.
possibly can be.
you need like a tactical belt for this, so that you can attach.
Oh, we have belts, dude. Yeah, we have
You
big,
can attach
3-inch
fins to
webbing.
your tactical belt in case you get caught in a rip.
If you get
right?
some,
Yeah.
you need the Cry Precision Desert versions of those. You could sell them for trillions of dollars.
No, there are some guys that wear fins
carbon
in
fiber tactical fins.
Carbon fiber desert camo wetsuit.
Nice.
Be a millionaire.
Wetsuit technology basically sucks. They need to up their game there. Like you basically get a pouch to put your key in, and that's about it. They need to up that.
You're buying fancy wetsuits. Mine don't have a key pouch, dude.
Yeah, it's like $300 or something like that,
Yeah.
right? What do you spend? It's like $200, $300.
It's like $250. That my nicest one.
You're getting
Maybe it has a key
ones,
pouch.
dude. Don't class shame me here, Tyler. All right. We will talk to you next week. And yes, thank you. I hope this was informative for everything. It was informative for me. I mean, I talk to Patrick all the time. I didn't know any of this shit. So thank you for coming on. We'll talk to you later.